Welcome to Fantasy or Reality, the Gambling Problem Podcast. This is the All Recovery series. And today, my guest is Matty W. He works for the Saratoga County Addiction Services as a CASAC, and he's been doing that for about 5 years. Matty's going to be our third guest that we've had on this podcast. And when I threw it out at a meeting recently that I was looking for guests to come onto this podcast, Matty reached out almost immediately, and I'm really excited to hear his story. Really excited to hear about his recovery, and I just want to thank you again, Matty, for coming and doing this. And I just appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So, if you want to just jump in and let us know what led you into recovery, tell us a little bit about your story and what finally brought you into recovery, please.
Yeah, so I've been sober now for like 6.5 years. And I mean, my story isn't really like all that bad. Nothing really like special. I mean, there were some bad things that happened, but like having been around the recovery community, I've heard, certainly worse that's happened to people. And I grew up in a pretty like privileged lifestyle. Middle class in Rhode Island, very self-contained unit. Like my parents belonged to this church that we went to, and I went to a private Christian school up until eighth grade, and I don't know. I really identified with like I felt something in church, right? I felt something when I was around other people, um, and it was a really elusive feeling. I didn't experience it all the time, but when I did, it was man, it was powerful. Um, so then, like at eighth grade or for ninth grade, I transferred to a public school, and I was introduced to everything, alcohol, marijuana, hallucinogens, basically all of it in a super short time span. Like I started at the school that, late August or early September, and within 3 weeks, I'd been arrested twice for shoplifting cigarettes and, I can't remember what the other charge was. Um, I picked up some other charges along the way too. So like, and they weren't necessarily like alcohol or drug related. They were just me acting out and being rebellious. Uh, so anyway, I discover alcohol, I discover marijuana, I find like ways to get out of myself, out of like this body, because I just couldn't stand being me. I always felt like I was competing for other people's attention. I've never felt like I was good enough. And like, I mean, I guess a lot of it comes down to being fear based, right? Uh, I was afraid of what other people would, think about me. And so, like, I acted in a certain way. Uh, like, I acted how I thought they wanted me to be. Like, there was never any, like, genuine, like, me. Um, and I left for California after high school and found out really quickly that if I just grew like a mustache and a goatee, I could get into bars. So, like, discovering the bar scene was fantastic because, especially in a big city like San Francisco, no one knows who you are. And if you stumble down the street to the next bar, no one knows who you are. So you can just keep on putting on different faces, right? Um, I got involved with meth for like a year out in California, and that was eye opening. That's the only thing that ever got me to put down alcohol, because there's no point in getting drunk when you're on meth. Uh, I ended up having to move away from California because of that addiction, and back to Rhode Island, back in with my family, and the drinking just took over in like full effect. Um, I had the experience that like I knew what meth could do to me, so I knew I never wanted to go back there. But alcohol's harmless, right? Weed's harmless. Um, I continued drinking for another 10 years before my first detox. Um, and, when I went into that first detox, I knew something was wrong. I knew I had lost that connection that I felt with other people, that connection that drugs gave me. Um, and I thought by going into detox, I would fix it. But then, like 7 days out, I was like, man, I made it a week. I should celebrate with a six pack. And that kicked off like another year and a half of not really like not knowing what to do. Like I'm a fixer, right? I like to solve problems. And there was this problem that I had, and there was I couldn't figure out how to fix it. Um, so I went back to rehab, went into a long term outpatient program, New Choices in Schenectady.
Hmm.
And I did really well in the program because I had like guidelines to live by. I got involved in AA while I was there. And then, I found myself doing, not doing the things that like got me into recovery. I quit going to therapy. I quit taking my medication. I quit talking to my sponsor. I did a really good job of isolating myself. And I mean, that relapse was brutal. Um, that kicked off like another 2 years of just miserable drinking and, doing anything I could get my hands on. Um, but then like I found myself, I'm so grateful to New Choices and AA because I found myself in a situation at the end of that 2 years um, that was really incredibly familiar. I started feeling alone in a group of people, right? I was working 60 hours a week as a CNA, drinking through all of my shifts. And I had every opportunity to connect with wonderful people like the patients, my coworkers, and I was just miserable and alone. Um, so back to rehab, back to New Choices. Um, and I was able to put into effect like everything that I had learned the first time around, like when I went in. Um, so yeah, I mean, recovery's been a trip since then. I think I went back to school and got my degrees. Uh, I've been married and divorced in the 6.5 years of recovery that I have.
Hmm.
I've lost people, I've found people, and man, I wouldn't trade this for anything. It's like it's easy for me to forget that I wanted to die towards the end. Um, and as bad as life gets now, it hasn't gotten that bad.
Yeah. Now thank you very much. So before I jump into the questions, just a few things. Like what I've noticed, the big through line is for a lot of people in recovery, and I've noticed just from listening, a lot of people in life, for whatever reason, so many of us feel like we're not enough for the people around us. We feel like we need to perform for the people around us. We need to do something to make people like us, and for whatever reason, people like us who end up falling into addictions, that's just um, just the tool that we use to try to make ourselves feel better. But I've really noticed that that is one of the big through lines is just not feeling enough because I can tell you I felt that from early on, from the begin, like from a young, I'd say probably from 11 or 12 is when I really started to feel those feelings and notice those feelings, and it just spiraled into drug addiction in my early life, and then later in life gambling and whatnot. Um, but what I'm curious about is when you went back to rehab for this last time and you went back to New Choices, and again, just quick, I love New Choices. The last person I interviewed was Chris L. He works as a clinician over there at New Choices. I know Nico and several of the people over there, and it's a great program over there. So anybody in the area, I would suggest definitely going there. Great supportive people. There's a lot of great recovery centers and treatment centers in our area in the capital region. Um, Now, like I said, before we jump into questions, I'm curious, what was it this last time you think that helped make it stick for you?
Uh, well, thanks for plugging New Choices. That place saved my choice. That saved my life. Twice. It was there for me when I needed it, but it comes down to I didn't want to die,
Mm.
and I was having some really terrible thoughts. Not necessarily, about killing myself, but just different ways that, like, that's where the desire to, like, escape uh this miserable shell that I was in was taking me. Um and so, like, that, we talking addiction counseling about having the desire, the ability, the need, and, like, all three of those just came in together at the same spot at the same time. Uh, like I said, thank God I knew where to go. Thank God I had, somewhere to go. Thank God for Medicaid, right? To, like, pay
Mhm.
for me while I took 9 months of my life off in order to learn how to get sober. Um, so yeah, and it was, and, like, the immediacy of it too, right? Like, I reached out for help and I was in a rehab within 24 hours. I don't know um, what would have happened if it had taken another 24 hours.
Yeah.
So that immediacy, and then, like, the rapid response of people who want to do good things in this world.
Yeah, we have some great people in this industry or in this, non-for-profit in this service sector. There's so many great people in these treatment centers that really care and just want to help. And obviously, you're a part of that now. Um, yeah, and like we were talking about earlier before we started the podcast, is that like we said, recovery is not linear. We a lot of people go in, come out, go in, come out. I mean, I same thing for myself. I was in NA and then relapse, in NA and relapse, in NA relapse, up and down until I finally stopped using drugs. But then, many years later, started gambling, and then that's when, after I got into recovery for gambling, that's when recovery finally stuck. So the things that we learn each time around, it's not like we're resetting back at zero. We still have the knowledge, and then we still, like you said, you knew where to reach back out for help. So when you were finally ready, when you were ready to change, because you didn't want to die, you just wanted to finally get better, and you knew the people to call. And I'm really grateful for places like New Choices and many others around here and around the country. Um, so I'll jump into the first question I have for you. What have been the tools you have used in recovery to maintain it successfully? And what have you found that works best for you and why?
So that's a super deep question, because it changes, right? What I needed on day one is not what I'm doing 6.5 years later. Uh, and in early recovery, the best thing you can do is just like go back to, well, best thing I could do was go back to basics, right? Those, those urges and cravings are going to hit, and they're going to hit hard. Um, but you also know they're going to end, right? They're not, they're not going to stick around forever. And if you can make it through the 10, 20, 30 minutes or whatever, then, that's chalking up a small victory. And it's the small victories that win the war, right? Um, I I'm really a fan of using like breathing exercises in my practice. I teach people breathing exercises. That's like the first thing we do, and I always get this funny look, like, why are we talking about breathing? It's something automatic that we do, and that gives me like a segue to jump into mindfulness, right? Um, if I'm mindful about where I am, if I'm mindful about what I'm feeling, then I have a better chance of not making an unthought out mistake, right? Uh, like at this point in my recovery, it's going to be an active decision that I drink. It's going to be an active decision that I smoke weed or do whatever. Um, but early in recovery, it can feel like that response is automatic. Uh, so yeah, breathing. Any mindfulness based technique that you can learn. One of the earliest ones I learned was using the five senses, right? Something you can see, something you can hear, something you can smell, something you can taste, something you can touch. Um, because yet, those urges might feel really real in the moment, but they'll be gone in a relatively short amount of time. Uh, and then those mindfulness based practices really springboarded me into what is working for me now, which is just meditation. Meditation helps me become aware of like what's mine to deal with and what's other people's to deal with, and um, that's all the serenity prayer cognitively is, right? Recognizing what you can and can't change. Um, I can change a lot about myself, and I can't change things about other people. Uh, so if I'm feeling squirrely for whatever reason, it's probably because I'm not paying attention to how I'm feeling like in that moment. Um, there's something else at work. I'm trying to fulfill like some other need in myself. I'm trying to be something else for somebody else that I'm really not. Um, so yeah, mindfulness springboarding into meditation. There we go. That's my
I
answer
love
for you.
that. I love that. That's the first time I've heard that. Um, and I couldn't agree more. Sometimes just one of my favorite things to do is to just honestly go sit outside and just listen to the wind blowing through the tree leaves. And sometimes that's where I can just feel the most calm and at peace and let my mind rest. And like you said, it's been over 5 years for me too, like too, since the last time I placed a bet. And it's been, um, God, 17 years since I've used any narcotics. And so it would be an active decision if I wanted to go back at this point. But um, yeah, I like just the other day, my wife and I mean, just yesterday, we went out paddleboarding and went out on a lake and got out in the middle of the lake and just kind of sat there. It was a breezy day, put our legs in the water, and it was very calming and peaceful. And yeah, if you can find somewhere, even if it's in your own home, where you can just kind of sit in your own thoughts and take a breath, and like you said, that the the urges will pass, and they're very difficult in the beginning, but as time goes on, the more and more you get through each urge, it gets a little bit easier each time. So I love that.
Mm,
I love that answer. Um, Now the next question I have, I asked this only because not to, I'm not trying to cast a negative light on any form of recovery because everybody's got their own pathway. Everybody has used different tools. But I asked this question, which is, what recovery methods have you tried that didn't work well for you and why? Only to detail that all of us can try different types of recovery methods that may not have worked for us. And that's all right. There's 1,000 different ways to recover now. It's not just one way is the only way anymore. And
right.
so I'd like to just kind of put that out there, just to say, was there anything that didn't work for you? And then how did you maybe pivot into something else?
Uh, that's 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 really funny. And I was thinking about this question earlier today. What are the things that didn't work for me? And I was like racking my brain to try to think up something that didn't work. But I think it's important to just try out as many things as possible, right?
Yeah.
I tried NA. NA didn't NA didn't work for me. I tried AA. AA has really worked for me. Um, and they're the same goddamn program, just with a
Yeah.
different skin on it. And I know other people that have had the opposite experience. I've had friends in recovery for years that got well in NA, and they won't go to an AA meeting with me because it doesn't feel right for them.
Mhm.
Um, and there's like I know that therapy worked for me and didn't work for other people. I know that certain medications worked for me that didn't work for other people. So like, I mean, I think it's just important to try everything, right? You throw like 100 darts at a dartboard, maybe two or three will hit the bullseye, right?
Yeah.
So you try throwing as many darts as you can. If you throw one dart and it doesn't hit the bullseye, and you're like, well, fuck this game, like then that's you're never going to get anywhere, right? Um, so couldn't really think of things that didn't work for me. The other benefit to just trying anything and seeing what sticks is like I said earlier, what worked for me on day one is not going to be the same thing that works for me at 6.5 years. So
Yeah.
if I'm just out trying new things out to see what works, maybe one of those things will kick in for me later on down the line. Like meditation was, practically painful at first, to sit there quiet with my eyes closed, with my own thoughts. Um, I remember setting an alarm for 10 minutes thinking I'm going to be the meditation master. Um, and going through this like mental torture. And finally, when I opened my eyes, like 2.5 minutes had passed. So, like now, it's something that really works for me, and I, meditate for like 20 minutes, 5, 6 times a week in the morning, right? So, like, just because something doesn't work now doesn't mean it's not going to work later.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many great recovery tools. And yeah, I love that. If there's not one, if there isn't an answer, then that's even better. But I love the idea of, how fluid recovery can be. It's like, you're right. I mean, the stuff that I did in the very beginning of my recovery in the first year is not what I do now. I mean, I used to go to 3, 4 meetings a week. I used to go to therapy every single day. I used to listen to podcasts about recovery every single day. And now, 5 plus years in, I mean, therapy saved my life, but I haven't been in about a year. And now when I go,
Mm,
more of just a check in, with my therapist to see what's going on in life. It's like a lot of the hard work to help myself recover was done in those first 2 to 3 years. That's where I really dove into um, the behaviors behind the addictions and the whys, and that's what really helped me recover. Was therapy, along with listening to others share their stories on podcasts and going to different types of support groups. And yeah, I love that like your recovery in the beginning is different, and if something doesn't work, just like you said, try. There's 1,000 different ways. So yeah, if AA doesn't work for you, try NA. If NA doesn't work, try smart recovery. There's a lot out there. Don't just give up because the first thing didn't work. Even with therapy, I've known a lot of people who've tried therapy, hated their first therapist, hated their second therapist, but that third one is the one that clicked and helped with really rebuild their lives. So don't get discouraged.
Mhm.
Keep trying. Um, yeah, and when you're ready, you're ready to do anything. When I was ready to recover, I finally was ready to do whatever it took. Um, so aside from your recovery tools, what have you done to rebuild your life and restore purpose and meaning?
Uh, so my career um, was a big change for me. I spent 20 years working in kitchens because I could act the way I wanted to around other people that acted just like me. And that was like, well, while I'm grateful for that experience, when I went back uh, into kitchens after trying to get sober the first time, found I couldn't do it. Right, the stress was too much. I didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. Every day seemed like the same thing, day in, day out. Um, and then I went back through new choices, and I was sitting with my therapist, and she said, I think you'd make an excellent counselor because you just have a way about you. You're easy to talk to. Um, and I like the next words out of my mouth, I'll never forget them. Were like, I don't want to help those people, and like, but she said that to me, right? And it got stuck in my head. And 2 weeks later, I was enrolled at SUNY Schenectady. Um, and it's just been a trip ever since. One thing that like one of my sponsors, you know, book thumped me into believing is that my purpose is to like help people, right? My purpose is to be of service. It's so that I can get out of this shell that feels really uncomfortable sometimes. And when I make myself of service to other people, I generally feel better. And I wasn't getting that from my from working in kitchens. I wasn't getting that sense of accomplishment. I wasn't getting that sense of, all right, it was a tough day, but at least I did good work, right? Um, and so when I started working in the recovery field um, at a long term inpatient facility, um, I got to see like all the places that my addiction could have taken me, right? Um, and I've like developed that as the years have gone on, and um, I want to make it clear that I'm like I never substitute my job for my recovery. They're two like very different things.
Hmm.
But if I can get something from one to help the other, uh, then yeah, I'm going to do that. I hear things in my office all the time from people like fresh into recovery that I take back to AA meetings and spout off. People seem to relate with that too. So there's this really neat like interconnectedness that goes on in my life. This like interbeing. So yeah, like my going back to school, getting my associates, then my bachelor's, then my CASAC, then now I'm in school to be a social worker. So I'm pretty sure that's where I'm going to stop because I have friends in doctorates programs and they're loony. I could never read or write that much. Um, so I think that's where it will stop after this. But that and like another thing, I've got a friend who he's a plumber. He does like HVAC installs on houses, like apartment buildings and stuff like that. And he gets the same kind of fulfillment that I get doing his job that I get from doing mine. So
Mhm.
it's not like everybody in recovery should work in recovery because that doesn't work for a lot of people, and a lot of people get in a lot of trouble because they don't know how to set boundaries.
De-
I
Definitely
was
have seen
just
that.
I was just lucky in the way that my cards landed. Growing up the way I did, having the education I did, having the experiences that made me me, that allowed me to do what I do. So, uh, don't worry if you're brand new and you don't want to be a counselor. You don't have to. You don't have to be. There are other ways to be of service.
100% agree. Um, and yeah, I've definitely seen people get into the field of um, the addiction related field and counseling and whatnot, and it backfire, and then it just becomes too much, and then they end up back down the road they don't want to go down. You definitely have to have the right
Mm,
mindset. You definitely have to have the right personality, and you definitely have to have enough recovery in before you can even begin to start thinking about helping other people. So having that self awareness is really great, and it's great having counselors and clinicians in these programs that can recognize a person like yourself. Um, and honestly, my last two guests that have been on here, same thing. They're in the same realm, same type of field that you're in, and someone in their life was able to kind of point that out to them also. And I'm sure you can see in your practice, you can see the people who you think would be the next line of people to come start helping. And love what you said earlier on too about people coming into recovery, new people coming into recovery. I don't think they realize just how much they help us as much as we may help them. Sometimes I feel like they help us more because it helps us bring us
mm.
back to those first days, and the insights that they have really help me not forget where I came from and be really appreciative. And they have some really, really great words of wisdom and just, yeah, I really appreciate the people that are coming in new to every meeting. So if you're new, don't think you don't have anything to offer. You have so much to offer to people like us who've got 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So we're all in this together. It doesn't matter if we got 1 day or 20 years. Um,
I love
so
that solidarity in recovery too, right? It's not about who's got the most time or who's doing recovery the best. It's all about
mm,
just helping the next person,
absolutely,
whoever reaches out for help, right? Um, I love that about recovery.
1,000%, 1,000%. I've met so many great people in recovery, and I've made so many great connections, and people that truly just want to help. And I definitely love that about recovery in general. Um, so, next question for you: what has worked for you to restrain? Here we go. Can't speak. What has worked for you to sustain long-term recovery?
Uh, so staying connected with other people is probably the number one thing that kept me going. I was telling you in my story about leaving myself really isolated and alone towards or like when I relapsed for the last time. Um, I find that the more connected I am to other people, the easier it is for me to stay on a path that aligns me with recovery. The more I spend my time talking to people that need help, right? But also like maintaining uh, those friendships that have been there forever. Like I was so scared when I went into my first rehab because they were like, you need to get rid of everybody that you know. And I was like, I've got some really good friends that encouraged me to go to rehab. So like what do I do? What do I do with them? And like I still talk to them every day. I'm still reaching out to them, checking on them, seeing how they are. I'm more active in my friends' lives than I was back then because I was acting really selfishly and scared.
Mhm.
Um, and I believe that if I were to have another relapse, that I wouldn't be able to be as present as I am for those people. And it's kind of neat having people rely on you, be able to rely on you. I spent a lot of my life being unreliable, and to have people come up to me and say like, I need your feedback on this, right? That blows my mind. They're not coming to me asking me to borrow money. They're not coming to me asking me for this or that. They just want to know what I think because they value my opinion. Uh, so yeah, definitely staying connected to other people. Because they pulled me through when, times were worse, like I got, I got married at, 3 years and I get divorced at 6. And I had some really, really good people in and out of recovery that helped me, navigate that. Um, it's not something that like you ever want to go through, but if you had to go through it the way that I did, then I'm glad that I had the people on my side that I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and that's one of the great things about recovery and sustained recovery is, like we were talking about in the beginning, is the feeling of not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy. And that's how we feel for most of our lives. You know, whatever starts that is different for all of us. But when we get into recovery, we do the work to recover and begin to build a new life. That's when you can start to look in the mirror and feel like you're enough, feel like you can respect who you see in the mirror. And one of the great gifts of recovery is having people trust you again and to actually feel worthy of that trust. Because there were times when we were using or whatever where people trusted us, but we knew we weren't worthy of that trust. We weren't trustworthy people. We were liars because many of us in addiction are, just trying to make it through that day. Um, but it's good to be trusted again and be worthy and feel worthy of that trust. So it's one of the great gifts of recovery. So it's a great way to put it. So thank you, Maddie. Um, and then the last thing I got for you is what words of encouragement or suggestions do you have for someone just entering recovery or may currently be struggling?
Just don't stop trying. Uh, they say like rehab's for quitters, right? But people in rehab are making the biggest change of their lives. Um, and if you've found something that doesn't work for you now, keep trying until you do find something. Like you said, if AA doesn't work, try NA. If NA doesn't work, try smart recovery. If smart recovery doesn't work, try refuge. If refuge doesn't work, there's something else out there that um, that will work. That feeling that I got back in my parents' church um, was what I was seeking like the whole time. And I know from my experience and the experience of a lot of the people that I talk to, uh, addiction leaves us in a lonely, like miserable place. Um, and sometimes going out and being uncomfortable is the only way that we can be well. So, you know, try try something on, see how it fits, wear it for a couple days. If it really doesn't work, then you gave it the college try, and you got to find something else. But don't stop doing something if it feels uncomfortable. Um, like I said, that 2.5 minutes that I meditated 6 years ago was pure misery. Um, and now sitting down for 20 minutes at a time is something I do on a regular basis. Uh, yeah, so just you know, be open minded.
Yeah, I love that because I feel like I equate recovery a lot to physical fitness because I'm really one of my big recovery tools was getting back into working out and lifting weights and getting
Mhm.
healthy again. Um, and I remember the first time I decided to get back into it, I was like, all right, I'm just going to do some push-ups, I'm gonna try to do some pull-ups and, maybe a few dips and just try to get into it. And the first time I tried, I maybe got through 15 push-ups before my chest was burning. I could barely get up. I felt like crap. I looked like crap. I just did not like it was tough to get through that. I could barely do 3 pull-ups. And but every day, as uncomfortable as it felt, I got up and I went again. And I got up and I went again. The next day I was able to do 16 and then 17 and then 20. And now it's just over the years it builds up and it becomes easier. And now I look back at how I was and how I looked and how I felt 5 plus years ago when I got back, into my physical fitness. And, you know, I look at that person and I feel like I'm not the same person anymore. I feel like, I put in all this work and I look different. I feel different. I'm much stronger. I'm much fitter. Um, I'm, able to do much more in life because of that. And, you know, you don't realize it during the journey. You don't realize that, like you don't see really the changes each and every day. It's about the incremental things that we do, just making that right decision. If, like you said before, if something feels uncomfortable, it's supposed to feel uncomfortable, but typically when we get through those uncomfortable situations, we learn something or we get better or we got through that urge or we got through that meeting that we didn't want to go to because we just worked 12 hours and we're tired and but you made it and you heard something that you needed to hear. um, and that's one of the great things I love about recovery is being able to, you put some time in and you can look back and you can see the results. You don't see it as you're going through, but you can look back and really appreciate the journey that you've been through. um, so, um, yeah, Maddie, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for all the great insights you had. Um, I really appreciate you and everyone who's willing to come on here and be vulnerable and talk about this stuff. Um, I know it's not easy, but I love that more and more people are willing to share and put themselves out there to help the next person. And that's what you've been doing in your personal life and in your professional life. And now I really appreciate you putting yourself out here on this too. So thanks again for doing this, Maddie.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone for listening. And, I appreciate you all being here. So thanks again for listening to myself and Maddie. And just remember, be good to yourselves and each other. Bye.